Let me tell you about the engine that nearly brought a car company to its knees. Well, almost. So I'm standing in my shop one day, a slow day, thank goodness, when my buddy, a fellow mechanic like 2 towns over, calls me. Now, this guy doesn't call to chat. He calls when something's weird. Real weird. He goes, "I got a 2013 Sonata here. Customer drove it in. Says it started knocking about an hour ago. I pull it in, pop the hood, and I swear to God, it sounds like there's a guy trapped inside the engine block with a hammer." You know, I asked the obvious. Oil level, full, clean, no warning lights, nothing. We both sit there on the phone, quiet for a minute, because we both knew what's up. An engine doesn't sound like that with clean oil unless something is really wrong. Not on the road, definitely not in his shop, but on the assembly line, miles and years before that key ever turned. That phone call, guys, was my introduction to the Theta 2. And that engine, man. It's the most fascinating disaster I've seen in my 15 years of turning wrenches. You want to know how many cars got this thing? Well, almost all of them. The Hyundai Sonata, Santa Fe, Tucson, Genesis Coupe, Kia Optima, Sorento, Sportage, Cadenza. Even the Genesis G70 and Kia Stinger in their early years. Millions of vehicles across 2 brands. Theta 2 was everywhere. I'm about to tell you all about the engine that nearly burned Hyundai to the ground, and yet somehow, without it, the Hyundai you see today wouldn't exist. Buckle up, this one's a ride. Why this engine was born. To understand the Theta 2, you gotta understand where Hyundai was sitting in the mid-2000s. So it's 2005. Toyota and Honda are the undisputed kings of sensible transportation. If you lived through it, then you can definitely remember all about it. The Camry was like the default choice for anyone who wants a car that just works. The Accord? Same deal. You couldn't get on any highway in the US, then without seeing this guy. Ford Fusion was out there doing its thing. Chevy Malibu existed. I mean, it exists. Let's leave it at that. Hyundai, though, they were the punchline. The brand your dad bought because it was cheap and he didn't care. Don't worry, you've only heard some of the jokes. I've heard them all. But Hyundai had no plans to be the joke forever, so slowly and quietly, they were getting their act together. Quality scores started climbing. The Sonata was actually decent. The Santa Fe wasn't embarrassing itself. And the people running the company were clearly tired of being the punchline. They looked at the competition and did the math. The Toyota Camry's top 4-cylinder in 2009 made 179 horsepower and 171 pound-feet of torque. The Ford Fusion's Duratec, 175 horsepower. The Chevy Malibu's Ecotec, 169 horsepower. Even the Accord, the class leader, was only putting down 190 horsepower with 162 pound-feet. Hyundai looked at those numbers and said, "We can do better." And they really could. But it was more than just about horsepower, you know. The late 2000s were when fuel economy became the battleground. CAFE standards were tightening. The Obama administration was talking about pushing fleet averages to 35.5 miles per gallon by 2016. Car companies were scrambling. Toyota and Honda had built their reputations on efficiency. Ford was pushing EcoBoost. Everyone was looking for the next big thing. What would be Hyundai's next big thing? Well, they decided that would be gasoline direct injection, GDI. Now, don't get it twisted, GDI wasn't new technology. European manufacturers had been playing with it, but in the mid-size sedan segment, nobody had brought it to market yet. Hyundai saw an opening. They wanted to be first. They wanted to beat Toyota, Honda, Ford, Chevy, all of them, to the punch with an engine that made more power, used less fuel, and announced to the world that Hyundai had arrived. You see, what they were doing here was quite audacious. A 4-cylinder engine so good it could replace a V6. Think about that for a second. The Sonata had always offered a V6 option, but Hyundai looked at the numbers they were chasing. 200 horsepower, 186 pound-feet of torque, and decided a 4 would do. And for all the problems that did come with it, on paper though, it did. The 2.4-liter Theta 2 GDI they unveiled in November 2009 made 200 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque. That's more than the Camry, more than the Accord, more than anything in the class, and it was supposed to get 35 miles per gallon on the highway. Hyundai had built the engine that would cement their legacy. If only it was that easy. If only they had thought of everything except one tiny, critical thing. They forgot to clean the metal shavings out of it. And in a minute you'll understand just how detrimental this became. How it was born. Now Hyundai got all the stick and hate, but fun fact, the Theta 2 wasn't just a Hyundai engine, it was a joint venture, a supergroup. A collaboration between three companies who probably should have spent more time in the studio together. It was called the Global Engine Manufacturing Alliance, GEMA for those of you who love acronyms. The idea was brilliant. Pool resources, share development costs, create a world-class four-cylinder engine family that all three brands could use. Hyundai handled the base design of the engine block and cylinder head. Mitsubishi brought their expertise. Chrysler showed up too. Someone had to handle the VVT technology, and that ended up being them. Each manufacturer configured the engine differently based on their needs. Chrysler went with a MAP sensor. Hyundai used a MAF sensor. Mitsubishi put their MIVEC system on it. But underneath all the branding, the bones were the same. And the bones were impressive. Like really, really impressive. The Theta 2 was all aluminum, block and head both, which was a big deal coming from the iron block beta engines it replaced. It had dual overhead cams, 4 valves per cylinder, and a timing chain instead of a belt. No more worrying about timing belt replacements every 60,000 miles. The 2.0-liter version was a square engine, bore and stroke both 86 millimeters. That's engineering talk for an engine that likes to rev. The 2.4-liter version had a longer stroke, 97 millimeters, for more low-end grunt. They added balance shafts to smooth out vibrations. And for an engine this size, this was important. The connecting rods were fracture-split sinter-forged. Yeah, that makes no sense to you. But it's all just a fancy way of saying they were strong. Really strong. The whole thing was built with high-pressure die-cast aluminum and reinforced with a ladder frame in the lower end. All these sound great, but the real magic was in the GDI version. This thing took 4 years to develop and cost like 170 billion won, about $147 million at the time. The fuel injector sat inside the combustion chamber instead of in the intake port. They sprayed fuel at pressures up to 2,175 pounds per square inch. For comparison, a conventional port injection system runs at maybe 50 pounds per square inch. That high pressure had two very important jobs. First, it atomized the fuel into a finer mist, which meant more complete combustion. Second, it cooled the air-fuel mixture, which let them crank the compression ratio up to 11.3 to 1. Higher compression means more power, more efficiency. Like all these weren't enough, they added variable valve timing on both the intake and exhaust cams, dual CVVT in Hyundai's words. A two-stage variable intake system that adjusted airflow based on engine speed. They even coated the valve tappets with a diamond-like carbon layer to reduce friction. If there's one thing you should get from all this jibber-jabber, it's that every single piece of the Theta 2 was engineered for performance and efficiency. They shaved more than 10 pounds off the engine compared to its predecessor. The crankshaft got redesigned. The catalytic converter got lighter. The piston pins switched from fixed to full-floating design to cut friction. And here's the part that drops even my jaw. Its turbo version. When Hyundai dropped a turbo on the 2.0-liter Theta 2, it made 274 horsepower and 275 pound-feet of torque in the Genesis Coupe. The turbo itself came from Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, a TD04 unit, same family as what Mitsubishi put in the Evo. The engine block was so similar to the legendary 4B11T from the Lancer Evolution X that some components supposedly swapped between them. Long story short, this thing was a beast. The kind of engine that makes engineers at competing companies stay up at night wondering what just happened. So, I know you're wondering one thing right now. What could possibly go wrong? I also wondered the same thing right until that call came in. What went wrong? To understand what went wrong, I've got to tell you about the manufacturing process. You see, when you machine a crankshaft, you cut metal. Shavings happen. In a proper engine assembly line, there's a step called deburring, where you clean all those metal shavings off the crankshaft before it goes into the engine. Unfortunately, somewhere in the Alabama plant, that step just didn't happen right. Or maybe it didn't happen at all. We don't know exactly. But the result was the same. Thousands of Theta 2 engines left the factory with tiny metal shavings still clinging to the crankshaft. Now, here's what happens next. Those metal shavings get into the oil system. They travel through the oil passages. Eventually, they find their way to the connecting rod bearings, the tiny metal surfaces that let the crankshaft spin smoothly inside the engine block. Those bearings need clean oil to survive. They have clearances measured in thousandths of an inch. When metal shavings get in there, they start wearing grooves. The bearings wear down, the clearance gets bigger, the oil pressure drops, and then one day the bearing fails completely. When a connecting rod bearing fails, that rod doesn't go quietly. It's attached to the crankshaft, spinning thousands of times per minute. When the bearing goes, the rod starts slamming against the crankshaft. That explains the knocking sound my buddy called about. And eventually, the rod wants out. Literally. It straight up punches through the side of the engine block to see the outside world. Me and my buddies called it the rod of friendship, because it wants to say hello. Through your engine block, and boy did we say hello to a lot of them back then. The first recalls came in September 2015. Hyundai called back about 470,000 Sonatas from 2011 and 2012. They told the government it was a manufacturing problem with the crankshaft deburring process, metal debris interfering with oil flow, damaged connecting rods, the whole story. By April 2017, the recall expanded to another 572,000 vehicles. Now they were including 2013 to 2014 Sonatas and Santa Fe Sports. Around the same time, Kia also announced recalls for more than 618,000 Optimas, Sorrentos, and Sportages with the same issue. That's what, nearly 1.7 million vehicles. And that was just the official recalls. The actual number of affected engines was probably much higher. I once had this customer, Bob, older, retired gentleman. He bought a 2013 Sonata brand new. Loved that car like it was his child. Oil changes every 3,000 miles, even though I told him modern synthetics can go longer. He didn't care. He wanted it perfect. One day, out of nowhere, he pulls into my shop saying it's making a funny sound. The car had just done 82,000 miles. I already knew what was up, but how do I break it to him? I still take it out for a drive, and I heard that telltale knock. I pull the oil filter, cut it open, and it's glittering like a disco ball, metal everywhere. I had to tell Bob his Sonata needed a new engine. Poor Bob. He was so sad. And that right there was the cruelest part about the Theta 2. It didn't matter how well you maintained it. The problem was inside from the day it was built. Bob's engine replacement was covered under the extended warranty, but he was without his car for like 6 weeks. I had another one. Guy tows in a 2012 Optima. The engine just shut off on the highway, no warning, no lights, just dead. I get it on the lift, drop the oil pan, and there's a connecting rod sitting at the bottom, not attached to anything, just there. The piston was still in the cylinder, but the rod decided it needed a break. I asked him if he'd gotten the recall done. He said he took it to the dealership 3 times, and they kept telling him his VIN wasn't affected. Then the engine blew. The whole time, his VIN was in fact affected. The dealership eventually covered it, but he was without a car for quite some time. The entire thing was one big mess, yet this mess was still so important for Hyundai. Why? Because sometimes that's what true innovation needs. Why? It was still important. You see, the Theta 2 was a disaster. It cost billions. It ruined customer trust. It made mechanics like me throw up our hands in frustration. So how could it possibly be important? Because it changed everything. For starters, it forced Hyundai to become the warranty kings. Yeah, this might sound like a reach, but hear me out. Their response to the Theta 2 mess was to extend the powertrain warranty to 10 years and 120,000 miles on affected vehicles. Some models even got lifetime coverage on replacement engines. Love them or hate them, they stand behind their product now in a way that you wouldn't expect from other manufacturers. Even today, even in newer engines, they don't play about their warranty. Never. Second, it gave us the N Performance division. Here's the thing, the Theta 2's architecture wasn't bad. The design was actually really good. The manufacturing was the problem. Once they sorted out the production issues, the Theta 2 became the basis for some of the most fun four-cylinder engines on the market. The Veloster N, the Elantra N, the i30N. All of them use a 2.0-liter Theta 2 turbo that makes nearly 300 horsepower and sounds like a rally car. You're there in the driver's seat feeling like Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton. That's the Theta 2 at work. The same engine that caused so much pain became the heart of Hyundai's first true performance cars. I had a kid bring in a Veloster N not long ago. Lowered, aftermarket exhaust, the whole deal. He was nervous because he'd heard about the Theta 2 problems. I told him to relax. The N models use a later version of the engine with all the manufacturing issues worked out. I changed his oil, took it for a test drive, and I'll be honest, I had a stupid grin on my face the whole time. That car is ridiculous. And it exists because Hyundai didn't give up on the Theta 2. True innovation born from chaos. Oh, that will make a cool tagline. Or even the title of their documentary. What Hyundai needed to replace it with. After all this, you'd think Hyundai would want to burn every trace of the Theta 2 from existence. Or call it quits, go into hiding. But they couldn't just stop making cars, you know. They had millions of vehicles on the road and a reputation they'd just worked so hard to create, going down the drain. The immediate fix was software. They developed the knock sensor detection system, KSDS for short. It's basically a listening device that monitors the engine for the death rattle and puts the car in limp mode before it throws a rod. Kinda like putting a smoke detector in a house that was already up in flames. Yeah, it sure doesn't fix the problem, but it's better than nothing. Then came the real replacement, which came in two forms. First, the SmartStream engine family. These are the engines you see in newer Hyundai's, designed from the ground up to avoid the manufacturing and design flaws that plague the Theta. Better cleaning processes, better quality control, better everything. Remember, innovation. Second, the Theta 3. Yeah, they kept the name. Can you believe that? After everything, they still called it Theta. That takes some guts and a marketing department that's completely insane. But it actually didn't matter. The Theta 3 is a 2.5-liter found in newer Santa Fe's and Sonatas, and from what I've seen so far, it's actually solid. But you'll forgive me if I'm still a little skeptical. What this all means for you. You know I won't feed you all this doom and gloom without having you back. So if you're looking to buy a used Hyundai or Kia from the early 2000s, this isn't some message from the heavens telling you not to. No, that's not what this is. You see, not every Theta 2 is a time bomb. The problem was mostly concentrated in the 2.0-liter and 2.4-liter GDI engines built at the Alabama plant between roughly 2011 and 2014. So if you're looking at a car from that era, just do your homework. Check the VIN, make sure all recalls have been done. Listen for that knocking sound. Do all of this and you should be good. Hey, I'm sure there aren't that many defective Theta 2 engines still lying around. And if you own one, keep a close eye on the oil level. The Theta 2 also had a tendency to burn oil, which just made the bearing problem worse. Check it every time you fill up with gas. It takes 2 minutes, and it could save you from a $5,000 engine replacement. But here's the thing I want you to take away from all this. The Theta 2 is a reminder that even the best intentions can go sideways. Hyundai wanted to build the engine that would cement their legacy. They did build that engine. It just wasn't for the reasons they thought. The Theta 2 taught a major car company how to build better engines. It forced them to stand behind their products. And it gave us the N Performance division, which is genuinely some of the most fun you can have on four wheels. That's just the shocking truth. So, the worst engine Hyundai ever made is still the most important one. Would you imagine that?